You've seen the images. Maybe you made some. An astronaut riding a horse painted by Monet. A city that doesn't exist. A face that looks almost real, but isn't. At some point in the last few years, AI-generated images stopped being a curiosity and became unavoidable everywhere you go. The model that started all of it was called Stable Diffusion. Released in August 2022, anyone could download it, run it, modify it. 10 million people were using it within weeks. It didn't just change what AI could do, it changed who AI belonged to. The company behind it was called Stability AI. The man who put his face on all of it was named Ahmad Mostak, and he had a story that fit the moment perfectly. Oxford educated, former hedge fund quant, the guy who'd advised the WHO, the World Bank, UNESCO. The kind of person you'd expect to be standing at the center of the most important AI release of the decade. There was one problem. Almost none of it was true. This is the story of how a company built something genuinely revolutionary and how its founder used that one real thing to hide the fact that everything else was fabricated. The credentials, the partnerships, the revenue. Eventually, the relevance. To understand how that happens, we need to go back to where it started. Ahmad Mostak grew up in the UK, the son of a Bangladeshi doctor. He was, by any measure, genuinely smart. He studied mathematics and computer science at Oxford, graduating with a degree, not the master's he'd later claim, though that distinction would take years for anyone to notice. Oxford automatically upgrades bachelor's degrees to master's for alumni, who pay a small fee and wait long enough. It's a clerical process. It requires no additional study. Mostak listed it on his CV, like it was an earned qualification. After Oxford, he went into finance. He worked as a quantitative analyst at hedge funds, reading markets, building models, moving money. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. He was good at it. Then he pivoted. Around 2019, he started presenting himself less as a finance guy and more as an AI policy voice, advising governments, speaking at conferences, attaching his name to initiatives run by the WHO, UNESCO, the World Bank, the OECD. The resume grew. The titles got bigger. The affiliations multiplied. Most of them were fabricated, not embellished, not stretched. The organizations he claimed to have worked with would later say they had no record of him. The advisory roles didn't exist. The partnerships were, in several cases, invented. But nobody checked, because in 2022, Mostak did something that made his entire backstory feel beside the point. He released Stable Diffusion, and it was extraordinary. August 22nd, 2022, Stability AI releases Stable Diffusion to the public. Within days, it's everywhere. Artists are using it. Developers are forking it. Researchers are building on top of it. The model was genuinely different from what came before. Not locked behind an API, not available only to paying customers, not controlled by a lab in San Francisco. Anyone could download it. Anyone could run it locally. Anyone could modify it and release their own version. It was, for a brief moment, exactly what the open source AI community had been asking for. Mostak understood the room. He positioned himself not as a CEO chasing revenue, but as a movement. Democratizing AI, giving the tools back to the people. The opposite of OpenAI, which had started open source and gone closed. He said the right things to the right crowds, and the crowds responded. In October 2022, 2 months after the Stable Diffusion release, Stability AI raised $101 million. Cotu, Lightspeed. A $1 billion valuation on a company that had been publicly known for less than 60 days. Mostak was on every stage, every podcast, every panel about the future of AI. He made claims that got bigger with each appearance. 100 million users, partnerships with governments, contracts with militaries, ambitions that stretched from image generation to audio, to video, to scientific research. He talked about Stability AI the way founders talk about companies they've already built, with the confidence of someone who's already won. The product was real. The story around it was growing faster than anything underneath it could support. Nobody slowed down long enough to check. The first thing to go was the math. In 2023, Stability AI reported approximately $11 million in revenue. Their compute bill, the cost of running the servers that powered everything, was $99 million. They were spending $9 for every $1 they brought in. The burn rate was running at $8 million a month, and it wasn't slowing down. The gap wasn't a scaling problem, it was structural. Stable Diffusion was free and open source by design. That was the whole pitch. But free doesn't pay AWS, and Stability AI wasn't paying AWS either. They fell $7 million behind on their cloud computing bill. Amazon sent notices. The notices went unanswered. While this was happening, Mostak tried to raise again. The target valuation, $4 billion, 4 times the last round, on a company bleeding cash with no clear path to profit. Investors passed. The round didn't close. Then, the people started leaving. The 3 lead researchers behind Stable Diffusion, Robin Rombach, Andreas Blattman, Dominic Lawrence, the people who had actually built the thing that made Stability AI worth $1 billion, left to found their own company. The core of the technical team gone. Then, the board. Lead investors resigned their seats. Not restructured, not rotated, resigned. That's a specific kind of exit. It means you've decided there's nothing left worth governing. And then the credential story broke. Journalists started checking the resume. The WHO hadn't worked with him. The World Bank had no record. The Oxford MA was automatic. The advisory roles were invented. The man who had been positioned as the authoritative voice on AI policy, speaking at Davos, briefing governments, headlining conferences, had built his entire public profile on credentials that didn't exist. The product had made him credible enough that nobody looked too closely until they did. In March 2024, Ahmad Mostak resigned as CEO of Stability AI. He framed it as a principled decision, stepping aside so the company could pursue a more decentralized future for AI. The statement was exactly what you'd expect from someone who had spent 3 years perfecting the art of saying things that sounded meaningful without being verifiable. What was actually happening? Investors had lost confidence. The board had lost patience. The company had lost its technical founders, its fundraising momentum, and any realistic path to the valuation it had been sold on. Mostak wasn't pushed out cleanly. He remained the majority shareholder. He kept his stake. The exit wasn't really an exit. What came next was strange in a different way. The company brought in a new CEO named Prem Akkaraju. Sean Parker, the Napster founder, the first president of Facebook, became executive chairman. James Cameron joined the board. James Cameron. The director of Titanic and Avatar, now helping steer an AI image company through a restructuring. It had the shape of a turnaround. It had the cast of a story that wasn't sure what genre it was in. The company still exists. It's still operating in diminished form, still releasing models, still trading on the reputation of Stable Diffusion. But the $1 billion valuation is gone. The $4 billion raise never happened. The researchers who built the actual product are at a different company. The founder, who made himself the face of the open source AI movement, is no longer there, except as the majority shareholder, quietly in the background. The product outlasted the pitch, but the pitch was what raised the money. And without it, what's left is a company trying to figure out what it actually is, after years of being told it was something it wasn't. Here's what stays with me about Stability AI. Stable Diffusion was real. It was genuinely one of the most significant AI releases of the decade. And that's exactly what made everything else possible. Because when you build something real enough, people stop checking what's around it. The credentials were fake. The partnerships were fake. The revenue never came close to justifying the valuation. But the model worked, and as long as the model worked, Ahmed Mostak got to stand in front of it and take the credit. The product wasn't just the product, it was the alibi. If this is the kind of story you want more of, subscribe. There's more.